Hello. If you've used Unreal Engine and have been following tutorials of simple chase AI, the biggest problem that you've probably come across is that the enemies simply just go around. So whenever the player just hops off of a cliff or some sort of terrain where there's a fall or jump up, they will take the main and easiest ramp to follow the player. Obviously, that's not very good gameplay wise, unless you're intending to do that, but most people want them to fall off like lemmings. The default solution that most people recommend, and is very good for a majority of situations, is that you will use a Nav Link proxy. The problem is, if you have a lot of enemies following you, and you only have a few Nav Link proxies, it starts to become very obvious to the player where these things are kind of being funneled. It's very immersion breaking to see all these enemies start to queue up in a line to try and jump off to the link. Now you can add more and try to smooth it out. And I don't know if there's a setting. I have not seen anything whenever I've been searching up tutorials and combing through forums. I'm trying to figure out how I can make it just the whole cliff good. Um, but the more enemies they are, the more funneled it looks like, and it begins to look like an airport waiting line, which is not good. You want this to be a horde. You want it to feel living, that things are moving, tumbling. It's just stumbling off of these cliffs, even if it's kind of reckless. So, I have made a workaround. It's dirty. There's definitely ways to improve it. But for someone like me, who is not that familiar with blackboards, and someone who clicked on this hoping to find something easier, um, I hope this logic that I'm about to show you will help. Before I physically show the blackboard, I highly recommend watching this playlist of the WTF is AI by Matthew Wadstein. So, this is the tree that I have. Those who are experienced will probably immediately see things wrong with it. Like I said, I'm still working. But the main gist is this: I have a service here that is checking if the player is falling. And if they aren't falling, then this is going to be going and it's going to be using the nav mesh to navigate. And if they are falling, then it's going to use a simple move towards. The simple move towards just pushes the pawn forward regardless of navigation, which is why it's obviously the most helpful when navigating a cliff. Because if the person's going off the cliff, then the AI will just follow them after, because the AI has switched from using the navigation. Now, immediately, the problem you might notice is if the character jumps, that counts as falling. So every time they jump, they would be doing this. They would not be using the navigation, and that would cause problems, because then people can just hop and cheese and leave the AI behind somewhere, scraping them off of the wall. To remedy this, but I have a function that checks to see if the person is either jumping or falling. So, again, this is incredibly dirty. There's definitely better math to do it, and there's definitely better ways to go around it, but this is what made sense to me at the time with my knowledge. So using the arrow, we get its location. If you didn't know, the arrow's location is based on the pivot point where that little white dot is, so try to line it up to the bottom. It's not going to be perfect. I will explain that in a second. To start a line trace downwards, you then get the forward vector. Again, you're going to want to make sure the arrow is rotated down, because the forward of the arrow is always wherever it's pointing. And multiply that by the max jump height. I have an offset here. This is what I said about how it's not going to be perfect. The pivot point is going to be offset a little bit, so you need to add an offset to the max jump height depending on how much you've made human error on placing this. But the get max jump height uses gravity and the velocity of the jump from the character movement. If you have a custom, you can add your own jump height calculations here for this, just to make sure that you're always getting the line trace to be the length downwards of the jump. Every time it jumps, it will check, and if it hits something, that means you are jumping, because you're not going that far off of the ground, and if it hits nothing, then you are actually falling, which is being returned in the enemy behavior tree, and obviously it's selecting this. So The blackboard here, base condition, is the one that's checking if it's set, so it'll check if you're following, and if you're nothing's changed, it won't do anything. And then once you are following, this will fail. Switch to the directly move towards, and then once you land, this will fail again, restarting back to here. So it will switch back and forth every time you fall. Besides the function on the character, I have a service for the is falling. So if you go into here, that determines what the blackboard conditions are. If you go into here, on the tick AI, the first thing we're doing is we're just making sure that we have a character. If we don't, a bunch of errors will appear every time in the log. So once we know for sure that we have a character, we're getting all actors of class. I have it set up this way because my game is multiplayer, so I need to make sure that I'm getting the closest actor that we care about, because that's just how I have the chase set to be with the closest person. We're then getting the pawn's location, finding the nearest actor from the main character class, and then casting that to the wave character so that we can use that function that I showed on the character before. And then the reason that we're doing this is, as you can see, I have it set to is jumping. So we're not jumping, obviously. We want to make sure we're falling when the AI changes how it moves. So I can show this better once I'm actually in game, and you can see the logic working in real time. So here you see the here you see the enemies. They're currently chasing me. They're using AI. When I jump, they're currently using a nav mesh because I haven't told them to not do that. And so when we go over to our designated cliff area, I can sprint, and if I'm fast enough, I can go over there. You can see they just follow me like lemmings. I can do this again, and they'll fall. The big part is if I go over here, you'll see that they're using that, and then they'll follow, and then if I jump, they go off. So I can't quite scrape them off unless I'm following, and as soon as I jump off the cliff, they'll follow, obviously, because they're just moving towards me recklessly without using the nav mesh. The only caveat that this thing has is it does not handle spawn conditions. So let's say you have a zombie spawner up here, or the enemy spawner is up there. Because we are not falling, it will not move. It will just stay still. This is where I would use nav links just for the spawn conditions of that. In theory, there's a way to check for the character's height, so it will see that the zombie's up there, we are down here. Because we are lower, we will move. The biggest problem comes if you have some sort of overpass, and then you hide underneath the overpass, and then the zombie was up there, it would go, oh well, it's below me, I shouldn't be using the navigation mesh, so I'm just going to stand up here in the spot. As I get more comfortable with the Unreal Engine and blackboards, I will probably come back and make a part 2 fixing this. But right now, the way that I'm planning to set up the spawning won't have that issue, because I'm planning on having a pre-area condition and then the inside logic, which is what you see now, is are they falling off a cliff, or can I use a navigation mesh?